While conservatives celebrated President Trump's pardoning of 23 pro-lifers who were unjustly targeted by the Biden administration's weaponized Justice Department, the left was not pleased. And if you were watching them on legacy media, they sounded like the sky was falling. They were having a meltdown. But has the FACE Act been the shield that the left claims that it has been for the abortion clinics, or has it simply been a sword that has been exclusively used against pro-lifers? And is it time to make sure that they are disarmed when it comes to the FACE Act? Joining me now to discuss this, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Judiciary Committee and the Budget Committee, is also the author of a bill in the Senate that will repeal the FACE Act. He joins us now by phone. Senator Lee, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Tony. It's good to be with you.
So let's talk about this. You know, it's great that President Trump has pardoned these pro-lifers. And it's great that he has told the Department of Justice not to, use these types of laws to go after people. But isn't it time to just make sure that we don't have a weaponized government by taking laws like this away?
Yes, 100%. And look, President Trump, to his great credit, made history last week by pardoning some pro-life activists prosecuted and imprisoned by the Biden Justice Department, which went after grandmas and grandpas, putting people behind bars for years. And of course, the law that the Biden administration used to do this is this law we referred to called the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. The law was designed ostensibly to protect access to both abortion facilities and places of worship and provide federal penalties for those people who might attack either of those things. But while the protections for churches and places of worship have almost never been enforced, the FACE Act has been enforced. It's been used fairly consistently to prosecute peaceful pro-life activists, sometimes for something as simple as praying outside of abortion clinics.
Right. The history, the history of that, just for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, it goes back to Bill Clinton back in the 1990s, 1994, and it was actually the late Orrin Hatch from Utah that added the provisions to protect churches and places of worship when that bill was in the Senate, and that was passed. But as you've pointed out, it's not been used for that. It's been used to go after, and I should make it very clear, peaceful pro-life protesters. These individuals, these 21 individuals or 23 individuals that were released, they were not charged with violent crimes. They were simply praying and standing outside of abortion clinics.
Exactly, which is a real problem. They persisted in this really unequal, unjust, politically oriented enforcement on one side of the law, despite the fact that you had hundreds of attacks on churches in recent years. And so it became clear that, as far as they're concerned, the FACE Act exists only as a political tool to punish conservatives and people of faith and not protect them. And that kind of one-sided enforcement is wrong. And so now that President Trump's pardoned the activists who have been imprisoned by the Biden administration, a full repeal of the FACE Act is something that I think is necessary to prevent future administrations from similarly using this unjustly for the purposes of political persecution. I think this is a bill whose time has come. I'm running it in the Senate. Chip Roy is running it in the House, and this thing needs to pass.
Do you think you have to get Democratic support because you've got to get across that 60-vote threshold? Do you think you have some senators and the Democratic Party that will support this?
Look, this has become something of a sacrament to the left. So I'm not going to overstate things here in terms of our ability to persuade enough Democrats to come along with us. But I'll be looking for every opportunity that we can. If we can get to 60 votes to pass cloture, to have it pass muster under our cloture standards, we'll get it done that way. We will keep fighting as long as it takes to do that. If we see an opportunity, we will take it.
Senator, the left already, laying the groundwork for how they're going to fight against your efforts. They say that Trump's actions and the repeal of the FACE Act will lead to an uptick in violence. Respond to that.
Okay, so insofar as it will lead to an uptick in violence, there are myriad laws including myriad federal laws, which would be applicable in such circumstances, even in the absence of the FACE Act. But what we have with the FACE Act is something that's relatively easy to satisfy, something that has on occasion been used to prosecute people for engaging in relatively peaceful protests involving people doing things like praying outside of an abortion clinic. And so given how they've misused this tool, it's a tool that they shouldn't have. But in any event, it is simply unfair of them to suggest that without this, there's going to be Armageddon, that acts of violence taking place at abortion clinics will go unpunished. That's not true. Deep down, they know that's not true, and it's a disingenuous argument.
Yeah, well, it's also disingenuous for them to act like they're concerned about violence. Where were they when the pro-life facilities and the churches were being attacked during the Biden administration after the leak of the Dobbs decision? I mean, they weren't prosecuted. They didn't raise the issue. In fact, they were wanting to join the parade in many cases.
That's right. They were nowhere to be found. And after we've had not just dozens, but arguably hundreds of instances of things that should violate the FACE Act, and criminal prosecutions were not brought, but they were consistently brought for people who showed up to pray outside of an abortion clinic or otherwise demonstrate. You get a problem with that, and that's all the more reason why it needs to be repealed.
But this is so important. I was talking earlier with Congressman Keith Self about this, and we cannot state this enough, that while we celebrate these actions that President Trump has made to bring us back within the rule of law, we have to codify this. It has to be secured, because the next administration could be another Biden-type administration, and our society can't handle this whiplash back and forth and this lawlessness.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. That's why we really shouldn't have it. It's not. It's a law that is, by its nature, loaded toward one end of the political continuum and against the other, and that's not fair.
Before I let you go, Senator Lee, last week you, in addition to the repeal of the FACE Act, you introduced 3 other pro-life pieces of legislation on the day of the march. Tell us about those as well. Yeah,
so in addition to what we've discussed with the FACE Act, I've got a few other bills that would help deal with some of these problems and that would promote pro-life principles. One is the Abortion is Not Health Care Act. This would end the tax deductibility of abortions as medical expenses and clarify that the gruesome practice is not health care. IRS currently recognizes abortion as medical care and allows certain tax benefits to flow from that practice, and that ends up being an effective subsidy involved in the killing of hundreds of thousands of unborn children each year. So it would amend Section 213 of the Internal Revenue Code to make that change. I introduced another bill called the Protecting Life and Health Savings Accounts. It's similar to the first, but then the preferential tax treatment of abortion in health savings accounts. Because there again, current law allows individuals to use tax-advantaged funds from health savings accounts, or HSAs, and flexible savings accounts, FSAs, and a few others, allowing them to count as medical expenses. So this would in turn amend the Internal Revenue Code to exclude abortions as something to take them outside the category of health care. And then we've got another bill called the Protecting Life and Foreign Assistance Act. This would ensure that our foreign aid is not funding or promoting abortions overseas. Many of your listeners may remember the so-called Mexico City policy, first put in place by President Reagan back in 1984, and that prohibits the availability of family planning foreign assistance funds to organizations that happen to provide or promote abortions or advocate to change abortion laws in a foreign country. Since then, the policy's been alternately rescinded and reinstated with changing administrations. We'd like to make it law, and that's what the Protecting Life and Foreign Assistance Act would do.
And now this is the time. We were talking about that earlier, how we need to codify all these measures into law. Senator, I want to thank you for joining us today, but I want to thank you for boldly stepping out there on these pro-life measures, especially in the With the backdrop of the disappointment of the Republican Party platform kind of being taking all the life language out of it, I think it's very important that the Republicans lead on this issue and define it by the party, by their actions. And so I commend you, and I'm grateful for the pro-life stands that you're taking. So, Senator Mike Lee, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.